Hello, and welcome back to the Argyle AI Leadership Forum. My name is Brittany Sullivan with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partner is committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booth from the main agenda page, which includes complimentary materials and information. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would love to introduce our moderator, Azwini Atabudi, Distinguished AI Architect at Walmart Global Tech. We are excited to have Azwini and our panelists with us for a session titled Scaling AI Responsibly, Navigating Adoption Challenges Across the Enterprise. Welcome, Azwini, and over to you.
Thank you, Britton. That was really good. Probably I can start introducing myself for a minute, and I'll hand over to Brian and Anupam. So I'm Ashwini. I work as a distinguished architect for Walmart. Over the last 25 years, I went more into enterprise cloud native web application development, and now into AI and mobile apps as well. So specifically for Walmart, I've been focused into putting into agentic systems that migrates and navigates all the 600 million customers across the globe. And a part of my AI journey, we wanted to make sure that how Walmart's revenue has been impacted from $600 billion per year towards 1 trillion. So that's a kind of goal for Walmart. And so I've been instrumental for making a lot of things successful for Walmart's AI initiatives. Thank you, everyone. I'll ask Brian, so if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, thanks. So, Brian, I'm Vice President of Security Engineering for LPL Financial. We do 1.75 trillion in assets under management across multiple regions. My job is to ensure that AI is implemented safely through detection, prevention, governance, and deterrence.
Thank you, Brian. Anupam, over to you.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Anupam Mishra. I am currently VP for Agentic AI Data and Insights at Genpact, and I'm coming here today from Boston.
So that was really cool. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the introductions. Now let's talk a little bit about how do you scale. As you know, like AI, everyone wanted to implement, migrate that product from the native application toward AI native. And during that process, everyone was so excited. They wanted to completely migrate everything from the local systems or like kind of a greenfield product into more of enterprise solutions. And during that process, one of the bottleneck and challenge comes into picture is scaling, right? So companies like Walmart, so we have more than 600 million customers and 2 million associates. And this is the biggest challenge for us, I would say. And in that whole process, if your scaling is a big issue, we might going to end up putting a loss of 200 to 300 billion dollars. And this is where I wanted to get some information from Brian and Anupam how exactly they're scaling their systems into their companies. And starting with Brian, right? So let's talk a little bit about how organizations has when they're moving from AI experimentation to the actual implementations. What are the biggest challenges you are seeing in your company to turning the successful pilot into more of a scalable and enterprise application?
Yeah, it's a great question. It depends on the team that's doing that work. There's AI pretty much all over the place. They're looking for everyone to contribute in how we can scale. That may be additional efficiency, maybe a higher quality. And at the local level, it's pretty easy to do. Where we run into trouble, rather challenges, especially in the AI governance space and the data governance space, is when you try to centralize and scale that out across multiple teams. Now you're dealing with things like API connections, cloud instances that may have not been there before, additional code reviews. And as that happens, as it should, AI governance steps in and kind of takes control of the wheel and says we have to have a balance between security and availability. And that's where you usually have your trouble. I'd say, namely, API is your biggest risk. At the local level, it's pretty understandable how to use. When you try to do a one-size-fits-all, that's where you're really running into some risks, and that's been a challenge for us in scaling.
That's nice. I mean, one size never fits all. That's for sure. And specifically, I love the governance and API part what you mentioned. Anupam, do you want to chime in and give your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, similar to Brian, but I will say, one thing is AI is such a new thing. Everybody experimenting. So, I by no means, I know all the answers. But to your question, what it takes or what are the big challenges as you go from a pilot to a full scale production operation, I feel like there are three challenges. Number one is integration. So you talked about Brian APIs. Yes, broad integration is a huge challenge. A lot of times pilot happens in a sanitized environment where a few integrations are created, but a lot of things are just left for future. And that's where the real problem happens, where how do you, it's easy to run something in a separate environment, in a sanitized environment, but when you have to bring it in your production environment with all the risks of data exposure and data connectivity and data loss, it becomes a huge problem. Second thing is, a lot of times pilot covers the main use cases pretty well. Here is the main thing, and pilot can show that it happens well. But edge cases is where struggle happens. And as you put in production, edge cases start to balloon. And I feel like most of the places have not figured out how to scale an AI solution for the edge cases. So you might build a solution of some size, and that covers top 80%, and that's sort of how we do the pilot. No fault in that. But now as each edge case start to stack up and you start to build things for around that edge case, your cost of coding as well as cost of maintaining code just increases dramatically. And that's sort of where suddenly you realize the assumptions you made around savings or cost are not true anymore. And then finally, we cannot put human out of the loop. Humans are important. As you use these AI processes, how does it integrate with the humans? How does it integrate with the existing process? What Lego blocks get moved and what Lego blocks get put in is a challenge which is shown at full force when you're putting something in production. So that's sort of what my experience has been.
I love it, Anupam. So obviously, previously it used to be cloud cost. Now it's more of AI cost. And specifically,
Exactly. Yeah.
people put white collars. Like, if I'm able to use more context, I mean, this is the biggest challenge, right? Previously, they used to look for GitHub repos. Now they cannot look at GitHub repos because white code creates everything, right? So certainly you can just run a cron job which can push everything together.
Yeah.
Now, so now shift has happened from the cloud cost actually towards the AI cost. I like that idea. Thank you so much, Anupam, for that. So now, moving back, right? So as things are getting evolved into the same correlation of high coding, a lot of people have started to make themselves as developers, product managers, program managers, UX, and many people, right? Now they all came together. Instead of on PPT, they brought together the idea which was already been half-baked, right? Ready to go for production. But actually, when you move these things into productions, a lot of things fails. I mean, 99% of the cases fails.
Yeah.
And then you realize, instead of just thinking hey, previously what used to happen, so very few people used to code, and the usage was, let's say, 5 coders versus 1 million users. But now what has happened? It reversed, right? So you have 1 million users and 1 million coders and 5 users. It's basically reversed, right? So in alignment to that, I wanted to ask a correlated questions, starting with Anupam. As you have thousands of these products coming into your organizations, how do you decide? So I know a lot of people, they fast track the process, they try to crunch it and do hackathons and business ideas and try to see what product is actually going to fly in next 5 years. So that envision has directly got changed. So from your company perspective, help us, the audience, to give some suggestions. As you see 5,000 products at the same time, how do you make sure that these products are not duplicate and these products are going to really sell in the next 5 years?
Yeah, you are pointing to a very, very real challenge, but at the same time, very real opportunity, right? So the good part of AI is everybody can be a programmer, everybody can be a coder. The bad part of AI is everybody can be a programmer, everybody can be a coder, right? So, and we face this challenge all the time. Actually, I'll give an example of my last company. So I was leading the data team at TripAdvisor, and we had a lot of people who were interested in sort of building tools, and they're building tools. And the challenge was sort of which tool you make available to people, because these tools are also connected to your databases. We can think of two extremes. One extreme is let a billion flower bloom, right? Give everybody all the access and everybody can do whatever they want to do. Um, Very good for innovation, very good for morale, but probably not good for cost and data integrity. Other end is you maintain all the bureaucracy which you maintain in a traditional production environment where there is very well defined role. Somebody is a product manager, somebody is a coder, somebody does the UAT, somebody does the QC. Safe environment protects data, but the problem is you are killing innovation. And I think the answer is somewhere in the middle, where you get the best of two. And I think the best of two is by creating tiers of system. That's sort of what we did before, which is almost think of what are the tiers of systems you can build. So for your most critical data, most critical information, maybe a billion flower bloom is not a good idea. There, I think you want to keep as many controls as possible, especially if the data has PHI, PII, if it has very confidential corporate data, or otherwise it is affecting your core business processes, which is your critical business need. So create sort of a very high tier, and the bar should be high there. And then there's the middle tier where we are using some production data, some production system. Some data risks are there, but not as critical. And there you have sort of the lower threshold of what can be done. And then mostly for the internal tools where I create a tool which three people from my team can use, or I created a query tool which five people from inventory team can look at. Those kind of tools we should give as much freedom as possible, because that's where the most innovation happens, where the internal processes can be improved. So I feel like companies who kind of think of this as tiers and very clearly define the risks, and balance it with innovation are the companies which are getting successful in this.
Oh, that was beautiful, Anupam, right? I like the billion-dollar boom. I would say, like, instead of asking everyone to scale the systems, you should protect the systems, telling, like, now, find out the right people who can build it, the right people who can protect it, and the right people who can govern it. I like it. So, Brian, do you want to give your opinion on that?
Yes, actually, I think some of the most successful systems are going to be those, as Anupam talked about, those that scale easily. That's, at a small level, as you start to scale out, the infrastructure changes. And the more it has to change, the heavier it is on the system, because the system's already using it at a certain scale. So that's something that has to be taken into account at all times. And then there's the lateral concern. The business has already got investments in its products. And there was, I can't, forgive me because I can't remember the name of it. Truist, I think Truist was the name, came out with a self-contained financial services product within a day using generative AI. Really challenged the industry that I'm in. And so that product category, the competitors are all looking for the highest quality possible, highest versatility, highest use for the customer. They're not concerned about a balance. However, if you look at the other side of the coin, there are support elements within a company, cybersecurity being one of them, where the business doesn't necessarily have the funds to put into that type of versatility and quality. They're spending all of it on the product. And so what they have to do instead is provide the AI to those support elements in a way that allows them to scale efficiency rather than quality. So how can I take some of those, forgive the term, but some of those dumbwaiter, heavy manual tasks, or tasks that have a high level of human error involved, and fix those through AI? And if you can do that and achieve it, you don't necessarily have to scale that solution. It can stay at a team level or a department level, and that can provide exponential value to the product itself.
Oh yeah, I love Brian. So you talk about scaling the things, more of like reducing the human error instead of creating more and more. Like it's basically the more you create, the more you are like a kind of snowball effect, right? You are creating many of them, but unless you control them, you are creating your own self catastrophic things, right? And this is where I love it. Like now, as you start like starting your things, making sure that how do you reduce the human errors, right, by the
Yeah.
AI. So something could be LLM in the charts. Okay, so now I wanted to start another question. So basically, like if you see, always people talk about like success. Success is more of a spotlight, but actually the failure is the blueprint, and nobody talks about the failure. And this is where, like now, Anupam, to your point, as you mentioned, we all are into AI, new to AI, but a lot of people they code like we are the AI experts, and experts are created not like in 1 or 2 years, because in enterprise not only you deploy your applications, you have to make it big for certain times before you realize actually it's making some outcome. So if you see companies like let's say Amazon, They have stopped putting like AI first. Instead of like now they switched it back to people
Yep.
first. That's the kind of thought process, right? And now, like in the whole journey, as the things have come together, like for and evolved around like a couple of years, we wanted audience to hear from you. Let's say data is motto. Like we try to create so many products from the AI. Now, what are the biggest failure lessons? I'm not asking about success lessons, right? I mean, like everyone talks about success lessons, but I'm asking more about failure lessons, which you wanted to give to the audience so that they can take it the same thing and they don't smart people, they always learn from others, right? Others' mistakes. And this is where this is the opportunity. So please share your thought where you have seen some of the failures, and this could be helpful for other people as well to make their process more expedited. So starting with Anupam.
Okay. Yeah. Um, as you correctly mentioned, there's no dearth of failures in AI field. The famous MIT study which says 95% of the AI initiative failed, and then there are a lot of people who claim that that study is unnecessarily too optimistic. So there's no dearth of failure stories. Your question is good one, which is what do you pick from those failures? What are some of the learnings from the failures? And obviously there's a very broad swath of learnings. I will share a few. I feel like one learning is this whole difference between pilot and production. It's easy to get excited about a pilot. um, it's not a wrong way to start pilots are created, and in many cases a code gets created in a day, a code gets created over a weekend, and that really gets our leadership excited. Boards excited, the C-suite leadership excited, but then expanding them to production is a huge task. And I feel like in the enthusiasm for AI, a lot of times we don't fully think about what will it take to productionize them. So first learning is, as you move from a pilot to production, be very cognizant. We generally are very cognizant when we are building a traditional old style product, right? We think about the scale and think about how it will work and data losses and all of that. And those principles, which have been honed over a long period of time, cannot be given away just because the product we are developing is an AI based product. So number one, kind of being very clear about what it takes to take an idea from a pilot to a real production. That's number one. Number two is how your consumers, how your customers, how your consumer are going to use that feature. A lot of times, a lot of companies automatically assume that they will build a feature and users will use it, right? It's a very Las Vegas mentality right now, which is if you build it, they will come. Not necessarily. I think AI is not only changing how we code or how we make things, AI is also changing how users use different things. And my previous company, TripAdvisor, in some sense was a big victim of that because, as you know, TripAdvisor was a website where people came for a very, very long time to understand where should they travel, where should they go, read reviews, understand about a place. And now a lot of that information was very easily available to them in ChatGPT screen. Now, when we try to replicate some of the features, we try to create sort of a trip builder where people can build a trip, because we were seeing data that people are building trips on ChatGPT, and we thought, hey, we can build trip better than ChatGPT because we not only have the generic information, we also have very specific information. And we built our trip builders. The user adoption was pretty low. Not many users used it. People who used it, they did not use it as frequently. People who used it, they did not come back and change the things. So it was kind of interesting because we thought this is a big use case. People are doing that a lot on OpenAI or other AI tools, but why are people not using it? And probably it's because the way user think about what feature to use where is not the same as we might think about. So, as I said, the first is think about what it takes from pilot to production. Second is how will your consumer or customers take an AI feature? And last but not the least is how your own people will take the feature. AI has created a massive, justifiably or unjustifiably, a massive wave of concern. What will this do to me? What will this do to my job? What will do this to my stability? And unless we have addressed that, you're not going to get all the support from the people.
So that was fantastic. So Brian, if you want to quickly give your inputs.
Yes, actually, I believe there's a big misnomer in the industry now with AI capable solutions. It's no longer what capability are we uncovering, it's what guardrails are we putting into place. Because in the end, you have unlimited capability. If I can make a parallel to nuclear engineering in the early days of creating the cores, they were focused on how the fuel cell worked together to create critical mass. And many of those designs created what was called a supercritical condition. Chernobyl was one of those examples, blew the plant up. And so what the U.S. learned is that you had to have a proper control rod technology to prevent supercritical conditions, and to obviously keep control of what could be an uncontrollable situation. I think much of our software development kind of falls in the same thread with AI. But at the same time, you got to be careful about those guardrails. AI has a way of bypassing its way around too hard of guardrails. You want to create a biodome, so to speak, or somewhere between maybe a biodome and a playground for the AI with the proper guardrails to keep it under control and make sure it doesn't get off the reservation. But you don't want to create a prison. You don't want to create a situation where the AI has to go find ways around your controls, because that could actually create hallucinations that are worse than the guardrails are protecting in the first place.
So that is cool. I think we are on time, but before we open the floor for Q&A, so I wanted to ask one word. So you wanted to tell you wanted to pass to the audience so that they can take it along with scale, which was the main key for today. So that over the next 10 decades, over the next 10 years, that will be the most successful criteria if they follow could be their success as well. So one keyword. So starting with Anupam.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Oh yeah. So I was asking. So just tell in one word to the audience, who is they can take away from our panel today, so that they can, if they follow religiously, that could make them successful over the next decade.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if one word will do the justice or not, but I will say enthusiasm with caution.
Enthusiasm. Okay. How about Brian?
I have to do a hyphenated word. Zero trust.
Zero trust.
That's it. More important than it's ever been.
Oh yeah, I think I love it. Yeah, so definitely. I would say now learn and unlearn, right? So as things are evolving so much, so try to make yourself ground zero, and being a fresher, start learning again, right? So and learn again, right? So every day things get evolved. But again, so this was an exciting panel today. So I'll hand over to Brittany for any open questions from the floor. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you guys so much for such a great discussion. A couple questions. I'm happy to read them aloud to you guys. In your experience, where do companies most often lose alignment between innovation, speed, and responsible governance? I'm not sure if Azwini, if you want to kick us off with that one.
Oh yeah, sure. So if you see in terms of innovation, governance, I think as things are as Anupam mentioned, right? So things are getting evolved so faster. We tend to look for lose for the IP values, what we are trying to build. So essentially, what's happening? We are building thousands of solutions for Walmart. But we don't know about the goals, right? So what benefits it's going to bring for actual users for Walmart, and this is where we have to be very cognizant. As you build the systems, you also have to be responsible to Ryan's point and governance, and make sure that reduce the human errors in the loop. These are some of the things we would definitely wanted to create more for the Walmart systems, to make sure that we are, instead of losing the focus, we create more enablement for as a bridge between the store and the physical e-commerce, AI as the bridge. So that is something I want to definitely pass the message to the audience, that make sure that be cognizant, be aware of what you are building, and make sure that envision in next 5 years what is the impact it's going to bring. That should be your success story.
Excellent. Yeah, Brian or Anupam, anything to share on that as well?
I can jump in here. So governance, the balance between innovation and governance is changing. It needs to change. And that's because, up until AI, we've been operating at the speed, intent, and then to some degree, moral and ethical compasses of humans, which allows us to create a much more scaffolding or outline, perhaps even in some cases, a house of cards-based governance system, because there's a level of trust there. I mentioned zero trust before. With AI in place, however, there's a lot of opportunity for that to create catastrophic damages for businesses. That has to be weighed very carefully against competitive advantage, which is what allows a business to become solvent, insolvent, grow to become the top tier in their industry, and really just survive. And so that balance is being recalibrated at this time. I'm excited to be a part of it on the governance side of the house, but I would say in the end, it's a different dance. I'll stop there.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Brian on sort of it's a different world because I think Ashwini said it before. Earlier, there were 5 developers and 1 million users, and now the equation is turning. And what we have to think about is what does governance look like in this new equation where the pyramid has turned upside down, so to speak.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much for those insights. We have a couple more questions, if you guys don't mind. This next one I'll kind of pose to the group, and feel free to jump in if you have any thoughts on it. It does ask, what tends to create the biggest resistance to enterprise AI adoption? Is it employee trust, leadership uncertainty, data quality, or security concerns, or any of the above? Does anyone have any initial thoughts on that?
Brian or Anupam, you
Yeah,
want to take?
I don't want to speak for the entire organization. I'll speak personally. So I've spent somewhere between 6 to 8 years in education, multiple years after that, gaining experience and learning niche expert skills that I do not care to commoditize and send to my business so that it can rinse and repeat it ad nauseum, and then I go on somewhere else to do the same thing. I think I'm cautious personally about it. I do believe that there's going to be some opportunity in the future to layer on both the personal and professional use of AI to ensure that those who own this expert level intellectual property can retain it, while at the same time providing value to the business. Gone are the days where you come in and you provide your expertise, and when you leave, your expertise goes with you. And so that's something we have to be very cautious of as experts.
So, Anupam, do you want to say your
Yeah,
thoughts?
yeah. Brittany, going back to your question, sort of, what was the biggest reasons for failure? Uh, Actually, contrary to popular opinion, I will say humans actually are not the biggest reason, because at least in the corporate environment, I see that people are embracing AI, even though they might be scared of it. They are still embracing because they are trying to learn it, they are trying to master it. The biggest challenge, at least in my opinion, is number one, data quality, and number two, security concerns, because sort of AI feels like a black box, and we don't know what does it do behind the scene, and is it creating any risks for the organization.
So that was awesome, Anupam. So I wanted to share my two cents as well. I would say like trust is the new currency of AI. Specifically for Walmart, as we have 2 million associates and like 600 millions customers, the whole thought goes behind the trust. You can build anything, but end of the day, if you lose trust, if your PII data is open and it's exposed, so people they try to take a back step, right? So even no matter how enthusiastically you build other systems and how much impact it can make in terms of save money and live better. That's our like kind of tagline for Walmart. But I definitely wanted to highlight the factor as trust. No matter what you build, end of the day, don't lose the trust of the customers. At least like as a consumer company from retail sites, this is one of the learning what has been highlighted throughout our company. So always try to make sure that build something for trust.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, trust the employees is important as well. As AI begins to come in and fill those roles, and it's going to happen no matter what you do, you have to promise the employee that there's something bigger at the end of that they're going to rise with the AI's capability
True.
to take on new and more exciting roles.
I couldn't agree more than that, Brian. So that was the awesome, tip on cherry on the cake, right? So you put it.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, guys. And this next question, again, I'll kind of put it out there if that's okay. Do you see responsible AI eventually becoming a core operational discipline, which would be similar to cybersecurity or compliance, rather than a standalone governance initiative?
Yeah, I can start on that. I 100%. In fact, the companies who are not going to adopt the RAI framework and pretty quickly and pretty comprehensively would just die. I mean, as simple as that, right? RAI, I can imagine the next very quickly, I will see RAI become as comprehensive and as ubiquitous as say SOX compliance are or the security compliances. So I don't think there is any way without RAI. I mean, and I know RAI is one area where companies have not thought much about. Right now, they think of RAI as something which is stopping innovation, but in next very few years, I can imagine that RAI becomes as critical as SOX. And one thing is, if there are some well publicized failures that happen, say for example somebody writes a software, somebody did something, and because of that a big public catastrophe happens, and we realize, oh my god, nobody looked at that code before it went live. Guess what? There would be even legal pressures, even political pressure to say, how are you making sure that your AI is responsible? So I see the only way possible is that.
Sure, that was awesome. So Brian, do you want to give your inputs?
Yeah, I'm not gonna do David Bowie any service here, but when the internet first came out, he talked to a newscaster about the wonders and the terrors that come with the internet, and that he was looking forward to it. I think AI is that on steroids. I believe we can't even imagine the level of innovation that we're going to see. So back to your original question, I think there will be an expanding job set in AI. I think it will be ever expanding. But I think along with that, our definition of what is deterministic versus stochastic in terms of skills is going to change, be completely redefined. I look forward to seeing it. Glad I'm here to watch this new revolution in how humans interact with technology.
Oh, I love it, Brian. So I wanted to give my 2 cents as well. Like now, so you can think about more of responsible AI. Imagine like you're building a rocket, right? That's more of innovation versus creating an responsible AI. So that can launch the rocket and come back into into the launching pad, right? So this is more of a tuned one. As like the model is getting written, like a lot of hallucinations are happening, so LLM jobs are also making a lot of failures. I will so many it's kind of the Python is eating its own tail, right? So it's basically the data synthesis is feeding into AI, and again the output of the data is being happening. So it's a kind of circle of four, and in that whole process, if we don't put out more of ethical, responsible AI and trust, a lot of failure factors are going to come. So I think so. Responsible AI is the new motto in terms of data governance. And in Walmart, we focus more towards responsible AI.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. I think we have one last question, if you guys are okay with that. And totally fine if you can't weigh in on it, but this attendee is asking if you guys are able to share your general thoughts on a new executive order regarding government access, and the government being able to access new models before rolling out to the public. I'm not sure if you guys know of that or if you can share any thoughts, but I'll turn it over to the three of you.
Sure. So Anupam, do you want to take an input on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as you know, this came from recent issues where sort of one end there is a fear that these models could be extremely powerful and that can create massive disruption, and therefore should they be allowed to public or not. I think we talked about RAI having some kind of responsibility at the companies which are providing these LLMs or frontier models is not a bad idea. But the key would be, how are we administering them? Are we just building a bureaucracy which reviews a model and just sits on it for 6 months? Or we are building an intelligent group which can really look at this from a more comprehensive point of view? If we can do a good job of it, I don't mind doing that. I do feel like AI has to live under some kind of coverage because it's too powerful a technology. We don't fully understand it. So it's good to have some kind of checks and balances on it.
So Brian, do you want to give your inputs?
Yeah, so the Dodd-Frank law that came out for finance to ensure that things are done in an ethical manner, and so there's a communications archiving requirement. It's one of the most stringently followed compliance requirements in the U.S. today, and I believe this one trumps that by orders of magnitude. I don't think necessarily we have to govern who puts what type of model out, but I think it is absolutely imperative that we govern the use of those models, as Anupam referenced.
Sure. So probably I can add a few of my sense as well. So I was like, I always ask two questions to me. Do I have to slow my innovation or in my company versus creating something we don't know the risk, the unknown risks, right? So this is one of the things. Now we talk about companies like Walmart, right? So there are thousands of companies. So now like AI, like let's say we have, let's say, we have CCPAs, VCDPA, CPRA. So these are more of a data governance, right? So data governance has evolved almost over 10 years. Now I don't see like why we cannot do the similar thing for AI. So if you see in terms of AI governance, definitely it's crucial, right? Because as we are deploying so many things, how much data is getting exposed outside US, right? And what are the data is getting leaked, right? So if you cannot monitor that, because now we don't have a way to inject something into the API layer, which can go and monitor in terms of observability, right? So this has to get built. I love the idea, like if government is trying to tap into evaluating all these models before like releasing to the public, even all these models should be open source as well, into my opinion, right? So the way like now open source has been evolved, right? At least like now people started falling back. Now if you see GPT also started open sourcing, there are some of the models, and I'm sure like this will again evolve over the time. But to the point of like making sure that the sensitivity data is getting evaluated before it's accessible to public, I think it's more of a guardrail from the government, and I'm sure like this will be more regulated over the next decades of time.
Great. Well, guys, thank you so much again for all of your insights, for an excellent discussion, and for answering the audience questions. Those are all of the questions we do have. So thank you guys so much again. For a wonderful session, and thank you everyone else who joined us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be made available on demand following the event, and our next session will begin shortly at 12:30 Eastern, which will be a thought leadership titled "Reset the Limits of IT: Running an Operating Model with AI." Please remain on the stage, and the next session will begin automatically, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you guys so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vitin. Thank you, Anupam and Brian. It was a lovely discussion today.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks for the
audience.
conversation.
Have a
Bye.
good day.